G'day guys, welcome to my Rxys V2 video. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about NRL Round 21 recap for 2019 guys, so let's get started. So this first game of this round we see the Cowboys taking on the Broncos. I meant to say the last week's round, sorry, not this week's round, so yeah. So the last week's round was the first game of this round was the Cowboys taking on the Broncos. This game was an absolute great game, but I did think that this game had a lot of potential, but I really think that the Cowboys, they didn't play really well. As you can see, Michael Morgan just hung in, but he didn't try his hardest, but I hate to think that this game was an absolute brilliant game, but I did tip the Cowboys here by 6 points, and they obviously lost, but the scoreline was 18 points to 14 to the Broncos, and Broncos, they played absolutely really well, but they just need to find their consistency right, and I just think that this game will be a brilliant game to watch, and I reckon that the Broncos, they've hung in with their scoreline absolutely brilliant with that, with the brilliant tries of all, with Jake Clifford scoring one try, but I think this game was just a simple average game, which I think that no negative things that I think that was absolutely going to be pointed out. But I did think that this game was an absolute quality game of football, and I reckon that it was just an absolute brilliant game to watch. But seeing Josh Maguire eye gouging another player, I hate to think what people are going to say, because one thing I am going to think of, just because Josh Maguire eye gouges some players, doesn't mean that he just thinks that he does it for the sake of it. He's going through a tough time, and he is a great player. So I recommend, if people are going to comment negative things, just watch what you say, and I reckon that it'll all go well, because I think that Josh Maguire is going through a hard time, and I reckon he is a great player. But before, I did say a negative comment, but I'm just gonna move on, and yeah, I'm just gonna say it. Josh Maguire is a great player, so if you guys say any negative comments, any death threats, it's not accountable, and it's really unacceptable to say it in front of Josh Maguire. And I just think that's just really disrespectful to that player. And I feel so sorry for Josh Maguire, because he is a great player, and I just thought to myself, what can I do if he's going to do that thing again? I'm just going to think he just is finding it a bit hard at the moment, struggling, because the Cowboys are having that momentum where they are losing a couple of players, and they are having focus of not playing the footy right. But I am going to think that that game was an absolute brilliant game, no, but it was just a sloppy game of football, but I reckon it was just an average game, no, but yeah, it was a brilliant game, and I went for the Cowboys by 6 points. The second game of this round, we saw the Warriors taking on the Manly Sea Eagles. I think that this game was an absolute brilliant game. I was really surprised to see the Warriors getting a win here, 24 points to 6, going up against the Manly Sea Eagles, which I know for a fact they are playing brilliant, but last week they played absolutely shocking for the Warriors, and I just think going up against the Manly Sea Eagles, I just thought they were playing brilliant, Manly Sea Eagles. They just thought really hard, and I thought to myself, what are they going to do? Are they going to win, or are they going to lose? But unfortunately, the Manly Sea Eagles lost, and I did tip them by 10 points, and they obviously lost. And I thought to myself, the Manly Sea Eagles, I thought they were going to win, but they lost, because the Warriors, they've woken up, and they've shown that they can win that game. But they're just lacking in consistency at the moment, only because that sometimes they just lose, and then they just lack in momentum, and they just fall back, and they just lose really hopelessly. But I'm not going to say any negative comments on players, because I thought to myself, Cody Nikorima was an absolute brilliant player, but I thought to myself though too, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was an absolute splendid player which he killed that game. He was an absolute dominant half, which I thought to myself that he just built through, and I just thought he just killed it for against the Manly Sea Eagles, which I thought to myself, which one was it? Was it Roger Tuivasa-Sheck or Cody Nikorima? But obviously it was Roger Tuivasa-Sheck that obviously made this momentum obviously great for the Warriors, and they've obviously won this game, and I just think well done to the Warriors, which I am a Kiwi, which I am from Kiwi. Yeah, which I thought to myself, I reckon that game was an absolute brilliant game. But Adam Blair going up against like someone, I thought to myself that was pretty late, but I reckon that so many things could have gone wrong, but I don't know what to think though really. So I reckon Adam Blair shouldn't be sent off. I reckon should be on the report, and I reckon was not a sin bin only because going into the final seconds of that game, it shouldn't be a sin bin anyway. But anyway, I just went for the Manly Sea Eagles here, but 10 points. Third game of that round, we saw the Panthers taking on the Cronulla Sharks here. Now, this game was an absolute splendid game of football. I definitely got this win because I tipped the Panthers here by 8 points, and they obviously won by 6. So this game was an absolute brilliant game, and this scoreline was 26 points to 20, and it was an absolute close game of football. And I think to myself, Cronulla Sharks are lacking inconsistent because Ronaldo Montoya or something like that, he just lacked class at the moment with his defence on that game. I thought to myself that so many things could have gone wrong, but for the Cronulla Sharks, they obviously played really well. I'm not going to say anything wrong, but Cronulla Sharks, they have obviously played really hard, but for Nathan Cleary, he absolutely killed that game, and I reckon that game was an absolute splendid game of football, which I thought to myself, Nathan Cleary had that game to himself, which I thought that James Maloney was out due to injury, only because Nathan Cleary had a splendid game, but it would have put a smile on Ivan Cleary's face anyway. So that game was an absolute brilliant game, and I have full respect for all these teams at the moment, only because I just reckon that going up against so many teams, I reckon it will be an absolute splendid game. But anyway, those two games was an absolute splendid game of football, and I obviously went for the Panthers here by 8 points. The next game of that round, we saw the Dragons going up against the Gold Coast Titans. This game was an absolute splendid game of football, and I thought to myself, Dragons played absolutely really well, and they killed that game. And I think that so many players in that game scored heaps of tries to make it 40 points to 28 for that scoreline. But I did tip the Dragons here by 14 points, and they obviously won so many points. But I thought to myself, that game was a splendid game of football, but I was heading to the Eels and Knights. Do check out my vlog if you want to, but I am going to talk in my next one. But anyway, that game was an absolute splendid game of football, which I thought to myself, was the Titans going to get this win, or was the Dragons? But the Titans, they thought really hard. They've actually played really good in that game, which I thought to myself, they didn't play any sloppy game. Which I thought to myself, they didn't play any sloppy game. They played really good. I think to myself, did they play well? But I think they just play with their heart and soul. But at the moment, they're just lacking class. They are terrible at the moment, but as you can see, they are struggling with that team. But for the Dragons, they absolutely killed it in that game. And I thought to myself, Paul Vaughan scored that try, even to make it that scoreline. Oh my goodness gracious me, that game was an absolute splendid game of football. And I think that game had that potential. And it was a very close game, but yeah, it was a definite brilliant game. The next game of that round, we saw the Eels taking on the Newcastle Knights. This game was a splendid game. I was there to vlog that game. I just thought to myself, what game was that? It was a splendid game of football. I think that game was just really, really have been good in that consistent body, and I just think so many things went wrong in that half. But even though the shot on Clint Gutherson, which Kalen Ponga did, I don't think it was a shoulder charge. It was just like from the head to the elbow, which he hit his head first, and he went to the elbow second, which I thought that was just really frustrated for the Eels fans. Which I thought to myself, was that a shoulder charge? No, it wasn't, because he hit his head first, and then he hit the shoulder second. But anyway, let's move on from that. So that game was an absolute splendid game of football, but that game was 20 points to 14, that scoreline was, and I did pick the Eels by 12, and they obviously won that game, which was an absolute close game, and I was there at that game. If you guys see me, I was there at that game to vlog that game, and I was there. So that game was just an absolute splendid game, but it was freezing cold, which I didn't have any jumper or anything like that. But it was definite good game of football, and I think that Clint Gutherson and Maiko Sivo was just an absolute class for those two players, and also Mitchell Moses. Man, you're an absolute player, and also for Maiko Sivo, you're an absolute great player too. But anyway, that game was an absolute splendid game, but it was very cold and very, like, in the afternoon, which was freezing, and yeah, I was at that game, but yeah, I did tip the Eels here by 12 points. The next game of that round, we saw the Bulldogs taking on the West Tigers. I think this game was just a tight match, and I thought the Bulldogs are playing really well, but at the moment they are sitting in the 15th position of that spot, which they are not qualifying for the semi-finals. I think, though, that game was just still a brilliant game of football, and I really hope that the Bulldogs were going to win that game. And I think, yes, they did. They absolutely won that game, and I think, well done to the Bulldogs here. But for the West Tigers, I thought to myself, they were going to get over that line. But Paul Momorowski was going to kick that goal, but he obviously missed it, unfortunately. But, yeah, it was an absolute brilliant game of football, and I think that game was just really great to see the Bulldogs get a win here by 2 points. And I think that game was an absolute brilliant game, but hate to think that, like, Luke Garner was sent to sin bin, but also got, like, I don't know who got the sin bin for the Bulldogs, but I think, but yeah, it was an absolute great game, but seeing shoulder charges in that game was just not a shoulder charge. I think it was hit by the chest. Excuse me for that. But it was an absolute great game though. But seeing shoulder charges in that game wasn't a shoulder charge. It was hitting by the chest. And I think that game was just a splendid game of football. But yeah, I did tip the Bulldogs here by 4 points, and they also won by 2. Second last but not least, we saw the Raiders up against the Roosters. I think that game was an absolute splendid match, but it was very at the cold at GIO Stadium in Canberra, which was probably like even 2 or 3 degrees. But yeah, what a match that was. I thought to myself, was the Roosters going to win this game? I think that game was just a splendid game. And I did tip the Raiders here by 4, and they obviously lost. But this game was a 22 points to 18 win. But yeah, that game was an absolute splendid game of football, and I thought, well done to like the Raiders for that game. Well done to that game also. But yeah, it was an absolute splendid game. So yeah, I just think that game was an absolute splendid game. But yeah, like the Raiders, they held on like really well, but they didn't get that win, which says the Roosters, they really fought really hard, and I think that that game was an absolute brilliant game of footy. But yeah, well done to the Roosters. They obviously won that game, and they played really well. But yeah, well done to that game. It was an absolute splendid game of football. But yeah, I tipped the Raiders here by 4 points. Last but not least, we saw the South Sydney Rabbitohs taking on the Melbourne Storm. I think this game was an absolute splendid game of football, but great game it was for the Melbourne Storm. I did tip them by 12 points, but yeah, they absolutely played it with their heart, they played it with their spirit, and they obviously won that game. But yeah, that game was 26 points to 16, and I thought to myself, was the Rabbitohs going to win that game? No, they didn't. The Melbourne Storm did, and I obviously vlogged that game at the Central Coast Stadium, and I was there to see that game. But yeah, that game was an absolute brilliant game of football, and I thought to myself, well done to the Melbourne Storm for getting this win. But bad luck for the South Sydney Rabbitohs though, because unfortunately they did lose. But the Melbourne Storm were too good and too really consistent. But yeah, for that game was an absolute splendid game of football. But anyhow, I did tip the Melbourne Storm by 12 points, and they also won that game. But yeah, South Sydney Rabbitohs were really on top of that game. But yeah, I just think that that game was just so brilliant. I did see that was 10 out of 10 that game was. But yeah, well done to the both teams. But yeah, for the Melbourne Storm, I just think for people gonna disagree on that, just don't comment. Literally, just because the Melbourne Storm are just cheaters, they're not cheaters. They're really good players. They're really a top team of the comp. But yeah, if you're gonna be like that, then don't comment don't comment at all. Really, that's just foul language, and yeah, you are gonna be a fool of yourself. But anyway, that game was an absolute brilliant game though. But yeah, so for sore losers out there that just think that it was an absolute rubbish game, they think that the Rabbitohs got robbed. They didn't, only because the Melbourne Storm were just very good, and yeah, I just think that that game was an absolute brilliant game, and I didn't see any negative things happening out there. But yeah, well done to the Melbourne Storm. Thanks guys for watching my video, guys. Stay tuned for more, and I will be doing NRL round 22 predictions for 2019, guys, and I will be doing that. So yeah, take care, guys, and I hope you guys don't comment any nasty things. If I see any of you out there that comment, you're just foul. You're making a fool out of yourself, and you're literally embarrassing yourselves. So don't. But anyway, thanks guys for watching my video, and take care.